the lighter side of RC after dark. Just using a bit of a different microphone setup here, so just make sure, give me a thumbs up in the chat if everything is working. It should work well, I'm hoping. Howdy, CM. Yes, it's Stampede Week here. We are coming up to the end of Stampede. Stampede started last Friday, so a week today, and it's over. Sound is good, perfect. It's over this coming Sunday. So I don't really participate in Stampede, but it's fun. It's we went a couple years ago, and of course I went when I was younger, and it was tons of fun. So yeah, and our kids keep going over and over again. That's fine. It's actually been the busiest Stampede. I don't know if it's ever or if it's in quite a long time, but I saw some videos the other day of the Stampede, and it was nuts. Like shoulder to shoulder, can't even move. So it's pretty crazy. No cowboy hat, no jeans, no cowboy garb. All right, so I'm gonna hand the camera over to Katie. There we go. So we're using my microphone from my normal camera setup on here. So hopefully the sound is going to be a little bit better. I think it will be compared to using my AirPod. And then if I'm doing any recording in this live for the channel, I'll be using my standard microphone, so we may have to switch it around. So I just need to keep that in mind.
They said it's blurry.
Oh, I'll probably need to clean this off. Let's give that a little clean. It's probably because you're shining in the light. You got to be other way around. Yeah, so exciting news for the channel. Some updates and stuff. I think that's maybe a way we will do this on a regular basis. Obviously, we're trying to do this weekly, so we'll be doing updates and stuff. You can come sit over here. We'll be doing updates and stuff on this portion. So you guys that actually watch the live, you will get all of these awesome updates. So balancer for turbines. We finally have that sorted out. I know we've been talking about that for quite a while. The final stages of getting our balancer is in progress. So that is a huge thumbs up. It's been a huge process to get that. They're very expensive. There's a lot of logistics. Obviously, they come from overseas, so there's that part of it as well. So sounds like everything will be going ahead with that, and I'm very excited for that. Why are we doing this live stream at 9 a.m. my time? Well, there's people overseas that watch the channel, people in the US, but lots of people over in all over the place in what's that place way down south? Australia. So hopefully this works out a little bit better for some of those guys that are watching the channel, and just a little bit of a different time frame to allow other people to hop on the live. I know a lot of people in North America, you may be working today, you may be flying today. That's okay, you can watch this anytime. So that's the reason we're doing it at a different time today, and we've got date night tonight and lots of other reasons. So we'll be doing this at sporadic times throughout the week. So during the live stream, if you have any questions, ask away. Katie's manning the camera, womaning the camera, and sorry, I got a piece of CA on my skin. So if you have any questions, ask them. While I'm doing my work here, I will do my best to answer them. And somebody asked me the other day in email if I have ever thought of doing a master class. And that really is kind of what this is all about. The way we were discussing it back and forth by email, but the way that the videos are generally recorded, you guys might see a little snippet. And if you follow me on Facebook or anything like that, and you will not have seen the video yet, this tail wheel setup for the Strega, so far I've spent 6.5 hours figuring this out. Obviously, if we were doing a live during that process, you would get every last little bit of it, but the master class, or the After Dark portion, You really get more of the in-depth stuff versus the video portion. So when the next Strega video comes out, you might get 1 minute of the tail wheel. Some people enjoy that, and that's fine. Some people want to see the whole process and going through it, the frustrations, the challenges, and that's really what this is about, guys. This is live. I'm working on these aircraft while we're live streaming. So a little update on the Strega. Last Strega video came out, and that was purely based on the wings. So getting the gear in the wings. Since then, and in the next video, we will have the surfaces that got done, and we are working on the tail section of the Strega. So last night, I got the rudder section all finished up. So the rudder is operable now and set up and installed. That is good. This morning, I was just getting all my servo lines installed. So the next thing I did was do up my servo lines for the elevators, and those are using Ashlock connectors. Initially, I was thinking of just using a standard servo connector and having it installed like the Ashlock connector here. The problem with the standard servo connector is there's lots of vibration in this plane, and it's not a fixed install when you plug the servo line in. So we went with the Ashlock connector. I think when this thing's sitting in storage during transport, there's a good chance we'll be taking the horizontal stabs off. So that is the reason we switched it over. And then on the surfaces now, the next thing I'm doing is switching the servo lead coming off the servo to the other end of the Ashlock connector so it can just lock in place. So that's where we're at with the Strega. The next video, which will be video number 3 in the Strega series, we're wrapping up this video, that video number 3, today, this morning, while we're filming this. So we're going to get this stuff kind of finished up, and then we are going to record the closing for that video, and then we'll start video number 4, which is going to hop back into the engine install. So bouncing around a little bit for you guys, but when you see the videos come out, obviously it makes more sense. So that's where we're at. Again, if you guys have any questions, make sure you ask away, and I will do my best to answer them. So we've got our servo lead here, and we need to switch this out to our other end of the Ashlock connector. Ooh, and hopefully I have enough pins. I feel like if you've been watching the live streams, we really haven't got a ton done. And reason for that is we've had events the past 2 weekends. So this weekend is actually no events. The weather's kind of crappy, so won't be flying this weekend. And which is kind of a nice thing because I enjoy being in the shop and getting stuff done. So I don't have a problem with that at all. Okay, so we got enough pins to do one side, so we'll get that one done, and then I got to run out to the trailer and grab more pins. So what we're doing here is switching the stock servo connector. So we need to mark our signal because this is labeled on the end, not on the wire. The wire is all black. It's an MKS servo. And then we're going to cut this off and get our ends done for our Ashlock connector. Yep.
Some hellos. Kelly says hi.
Hey, Kelly.
Steve says hi.
Hey, Steve.
CM says, I saw you were doing a Servo Cycler as part of your build process.
Yes.
So curious what the rationale is for servo cycling. I get the purpose, but don't the servos get tested cycled already at factory? Sorry, I can't read.
That's okay. So, yes, the servos get tested at the factory, depending on the factory. So I know a scenario like JR. Nez wants to come out. Come on, Nez. Come on. There you go. She sits at the door and cries and cries. So, and I'm a suck. So the servos, like in the case of JR servos, they get tested before they leave. So what does that test entail? I don't know what it entails, but my assumption is they get plugged in, they get moved. I don't think they would go through 1,000 cycles. So that's the manufacturing side of it. Obviously everyone may be a little bit different. I can't speak for every manufacturer, but when you get a servo, it's probably been plugged in, it's probably been moved a little bit, but that's about it. So the rationale behind using the servo tester or the burn-in test is if you're going to have problems, you want it to show up as soon as possible. So generally with electronics, I mean, I'm going to make some generalizations here. Generally with electronics, when you have something that's going to fail, it's going to fail in the first little bit of its lifespan, or at least that's what we hope. You know, I think about all the homes that I've purchased over the years when we've had problems with our fridges. Usually happens in the first year, first few months. You know, after that, the appliances or electronics are good for a while and then they may fail afterwards. So the rationale behind the servo burn-in process is you want those problems to show up. Now, I've probably tested, let's say in the past year, I've built 25-ish aircraft. Each aircraft having, let's say, 7 servos just to make it an average. So I've probably tested 200 servos or burned in 200 servos over the past year. There has been, of all of those servos, 2, so that is what, 1%, that have shown issues during that burn-in process. Depending on the manufacturer, they may replace them, they may not. So this particular manufacturer, I won't say who they were. I didn't even bother talking to them because I know their response is everything gets tested before it leaves the factory. So they were $200 servos. I threw them in the garbage and I replaced them on my dime. Some manufacturers like MKS, if I was to burn in a servo and give MKS a call and say, look, I was testing the servo, this is a problem, 99% sure they're going to replace it for me. So that's the whole reason for it. I mean, you may test 1,000 servos and never have a problem, but the goal is to try and find those defective 1%-ish ones before they end up in your plane. So that's the rationale behind it. Hopefully that answers your question.
Kelly wants to know how big the fuel tank is on the Strega.
Ooh, that's a good question. So the testing fuel tank, we tested it with a 32-ounce Sullivan. So we work in liters, but so 32 ounces is 1 liter. There's been guys that I've been watching or doing research on forums and such, and it seems like some of them are using a 1 liter tank and are okay with it, and some guys are using like the 50-ounce tank. We're probably going to go with a 50-ounce option. I would much rather have a little bit more fuel on board than not enough. So yeah, we're going to do a 50-ounce, which is 1.5 liters-ish is what we would call it.
Dave wants to know, do you have a dream jet project and is your order book open?
Dream jet project. Ooh, that's a good question. Right now, for myself, dream jet project, and this is a bit of a tough one to answer. I know it shouldn't be, but it's a bit of a tough one to answer because I get exposed to so many different aircraft. You know, you go back 3 years ago, my friend Stacy asked me the same question, and he asked me back then what my dream jet was. It's monster time. And I told him it was an L39. Well, he ordered an L39. I got to build the first L39. He sold it, ordered another L39. I got to build the second L39. I've flown it a ton of times. I love the plane, but it's no longer my dream jet because I've already had experience with it. So the dream jet right now, I don't specifically have any. If I was to say a jet that I really want personally, it would be the Elite Aerosports BDX. That's one that if I could order it today, I would. I love that plane. I saw it last year at Kentucky Jets. I watched Ali fly his and love it. I think it's just a phenomenal looking sports jet. Scale planes, I don't know. I don't have any that really tickle my fancy right now. I like them. I mean, I would like to own the bigger F4. That would be fun. I'd like to also own an Ultimatum U 3.0 when they come out, which is the 3-meter version. So, but yeah, right now my number one dream jet would be an Elite Aerosports BD.
Ian said an F-35B.
F-35B, cool. Yeah, I mean, we've got a big F-22 coming. You know, if there was companies that were making a large F-35, I think that would be a great plane as well too. I've kind of shied away a little bit from the scale stuff over the past few years. I did that when I first started flying jets, and it was okay. They become a bit of a maintenance hog, and I'm kind of, because I'm so busy building airplanes for people, I like just having planes that you can fuel and fly and fuel and fly. Everything's very simple. Not a lot of gear doors. So that's kind of where I'm at mentality-wise right now in my aircraft life. But yeah, hopefully that answers your question about that.
They said, have you seen the new pilot matrix, and do you have an opinion?
The pilot matrix, I've seen just pictures of it. Yeah, I've seen pictures of it. Obviously, I haven't seen it in person. Looks like a cool jet. I think it's kind of got a neat layout. I like unique aircraft. And that one kind of has a unique look to it. I like the whole front end of it. The intakes, I think, are pretty neat. I've never had any experience with pilot aircraft, so I know a few guys locally that have them and they're happy with them, but yeah, I don't have any experience personally with their aircraft. But with my aircraft too, I'm also, what is Nez doing? What are you doing? You're eating Velcro, that's cool. I also, and this is what she does. So I don't want this to come off as being a snob. I don't like belly button jets. So like my Kinetics as an example, it's the only one in Canada. Not a lot of people have the Kinetics. I like that. The BDX is one of those that are becoming more popular, but still it's not like an Ultra Flash. I've owned 6 Ultra Flashes and I've lost my desire to completely own an Ultra Flash again. And an Ultra Flash in my mind would be like a belly button jet. So I kind of forget what the question was, but that's where it ended up.
Okay, Kelly says you need a 1/5 F-16.
Yes,
300.
that actually, right there, Kelly, you hit the nail on the head. That's actually would be my scale dream jet, a 5th scale F-16. That's actually on my list. I was thinking about one this winter, but I don't think it's in the cards for this winter for me to order personally. But that would be one of my dream aircraft for sure.
When starting a new build, this is from Sienna, how much pre-planning do you put into it before you start to commit with gluing parts together? Has that changed over time with experience?
Good question. The process has changed over time with experience, but it also changes with different aircraft. The Strega, as an example, for me, it's a huge challenge because I've never built one before. It's a prop aircraft. You've got a unique engine. There's no manuals out there. CARF has a P51 manual. It's so old that none of the stuff really relates. So the Strega has been a real challenge. When we ordered this aircraft, what I did was I went through and I made a list, right? So I just mentally do all this stuff saying, okay, we need this many servos for this, we need this servos for this, we need this for this, and you kind of get that, that stuff figured out in your head. What has really changed with experience has been the ability to do that stuff just in my head. Previously, when I would do a build, what would normally happen is I'd have an idea in my head, and then we'd get started, or the parts would show up, and then I'd kind of lay it out and then think, oh yeah, we need this, this, and this. But now for a turbine aircraft, I can pretty much get it bang on as long as we've got all the systems figured out. Like if the F4 as an example, we know we're going to set it up with air, so I can pretty much go through and say, okay, I know I need this, this, and this. There's always maybe some little changes here and there, but it also varies with different people. So when I did my first build for David, you know, he does a couple things a little bit different, like his fueling setup's a little bit different, but now it's very simple because I know his way of doing things or the way he wants his aircraft built. So it has definitely become easier over time. Aircraft that I've done more of, so like an F-18 from Skymaster, the big F-18s, the list is all up here, the process is all up here, and it's just easy because I've done, I guess it's been 3 or 4 of them now. So yeah, so that's the answer to that question.
Joey says we need a GoPro on Nez.
I think you'd all get sick. I need to go grab another connector, an Ashlock connector. Do you want to follow me? Don't let the cat out. So often in the summertime, I just leave all my parts in the trailer. So when I go to the flying field, I like to have as much as possible with me. So I'll have all my parts boxes with me, and I really don't like having somebody not be able to fly because they need a pin or a connector or something like that. So that's why I use all the Milwaukee boxes, because they're handy and it makes having everything be portable very easy. That's what we're looking for. Go on, Ness. Go ahead, Katie.
What's the most frustrating part area of the build? Is it usually the same with every build or changes depending on the size, complexity of the build?
Definitely changes. Every aircraft's a little bit different. Every build's a little bit different. Most of them are pretty straightforward. I wouldn't say I generally get too frustrated. Sometimes it's just, it's kind of stupid little things, like when you, I'm gonna pick on the Strega because this is obviously the most recent one. So when you look at the Strega, if you have time, pull the manual up and take a look at it. So when you look at the Strega, the manual is like, I'll just say 10 years old. Over the years, CARF has made changes to the aircraft. They've pre-done a lot of the systems. So the manual actually talks about doing this cutout for the aileron and says you need to do a cutout here, come up with a mounting system, all this stuff. Well, this is all pre-done for you now. So if you've built a CARF plane before, this is pretty easy. If you've never built a CARF plane before and you're ordering this aircraft, this becomes difficult because now you need to take a file, make this huge and a way bigger hole. You think the manufacturer would size the hole properly. So that kind of stuff frustrates me a little bit. There's a lot of good pictures on the internet for the Strega installation, so that is good. One of the frustrating things is like the tail installation. So guys that have built this aircraft with the Colm engine, none of them have really shown the tail section and how the tail wheel gets installed. So when I go to install it, I've got a fair bit of experience. It took me 6.5 hours to figure it out. If you've never built one of these aircraft before, or maybe you don't have a ton of experience, that's going to drive you absolutely mental, and there's a good chance you might screw it up. So that kind of stuff really frustrates me. And obviously the people that are sharing this stuff online, they don't need to share everything online, but it's one of those common courtesies. Like during the build here, it would be the same thing as me just excluding everything about the tail wheel installation and my frustrations and my process of how it actually fits in there. So now if somebody's building one of these Stregas or P51s or whatever, there's your answer right there. It's going to be a huge time saver. So that stuff's frustrating, but every plane is different. You know, this plane, the frustrating things has been the engine installation, but the tail wheel's been number one because there's no good manual, because there's no good information online. With turbine aircraft, most of the stuff doesn't frustrate me. The last probably frustrating build was the F-14 from about a year and a bit ago. The gear on that thing was not kind, and it was very, very frustrating. I spent a ton of hours on that stuff. So, but most aircraft is, you know, you'll find a couple little hiccups here and there, and you just deal with it.
Aaron's fourth says, at work, stop by to say hi.
Hey, Aaron.
Kelly wanted to know how the smoke was from all the fires.
Yeah, the smoke's actually pretty nasty right now. So there's, yesterday was really bad. I haven't really, well, yesterday morning I was sitting in the office and we can look to the east from the office and you couldn't even see the sun. The sun, it looked like this tiny little dot in the sky that you could barely make out through the smoke. So that was pretty gross, but today it's a little bit better, but yesterday was pretty nasty. But it all is based on the winds too. So when we get a north wind, it blows the smoke to us. When we get a south wind, it clears all up. So.
Let's see, it said, are there any random fire questions distracting you from getting work done?
No. This is the easy stuff, so I can do this while talking or chewing gum or patting my head.
It was like making a joke.
Oh.
Any random fire questions, he said?
No.
Because I just asked that one. Kelly says...
Oh, and somebody asked about my schedule, I think, too.
Oh, yeah.
That just popped in my head. So the build schedule's up there. Want to come in? So it's really not that crazy. I mean, earlier this year we had it down to here. But so the next planes to show up, I mean, the Stregas can come off. So the next planes to show up is going to be, I think, in the Skymaster order, these three. So we're going to have the Su-30, the XL F-14, and I think the A-10 Black Snake is showing up as well. The A-10 Black Snake, we're not doing a build series on it. It'll just be a build, maybe one or a condensed build series on it. And the Carf Rebel should be here very quickly. So that's actually one of the next projects that's going to be on the channel. I'm also doing for Kelly, who's here now, his TAMS BVM F-18. So those two are getting done here right away. And then over the winter, we're going to be doing a BVM Super Bandit for David. And then I'm going to be doing my BVM T-33 for me. So that's going to be exciting because we're going to do those together. They're going to be separate build series, but the old BVM or the BVM kits are a lot of work. So that's the schedule right now. It's going to probably fill my September, October, November, December. And then we've got the rest of the 2024 to fill. So I guess schedule-wise, it's booked up till the end of the year, but fairly open.
Kelly says Carf
Yeah.
quality, but my notes are lacking. And then Aaron says, I do the same thing, keep all my parts in the trailer during summer. I don't like seeing someone needing a part and can't
Yes,
fly.
exactly.
CM said, just a quick recognition that your answers have been great. Much appreciated.
Thank you.
And then CM says, speaking of the Skymaster, was wondering why you chose to use G10 plate for mounting the engine to the wood rails versus just wood. Is the G10 better for heat? Good
question. So heat doesn't, in that scenario, it doesn't really matter. It's not going to affect anything. Yeah, it won't affect anything. And now there's two different ways to think about it. So there's a Skymaster Big F18 up there on the roof. That one's actually for sale. So that one has the rear mounted turbines, which that one actually, the engine mounts slid in the mounting brackets. So there was no G10 on that one. But the mid-mount versions that I've done, the reason we use G10 is on the last one, because there was no brackets provided, I think. But the G10 also is going to be a little bit stiffer and a little bit stronger. The actual thickness of that, I think, is 1/8. So the channel that the engines or the engine mounts fit into being 1/8 of an inch thick, G10 is a better option than using plywood for that scenario. So we have done them in the past with plywood because Skymaster included the mounts, and they also work. But if I'm building something, I want to generally over-engineer it a little bit.
Kelly says his shop is empty without the F14 in it.
I know, it's actually very empty. And then so actually, yeah, talking about that, so in August, the F4 will be disappearing. So that one's getting shipped to the new owner. Kelly's F18 down there, that'll be going back to Montana. And so on this rack, we'll have a Hawk and a T33 kit. And I guess the Strega can live there now too. Thank you.
CM says, do you set build timelines either daily, weekly, or it just takes what it takes?
During the summertime, it is a little bit tricky. So most big scale turbine jets, I kind of give a timeline of usually 5 to 7 weeks is kind of the norm. That's during winter. During summer, everything kind of changes a little bit. So as an example, the past 2 weeks, we've been gone for, like this past weekend, I was gone Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So really everything slows down to a complete crawl during the summertime. But usually it's kind of a 5-week-ish timeline for most scale aircraft. And that also brings up why I like to have all the parts here ready to go. I don't want to start the build and have to wait a whole bunch having parts on order, because sometimes that they can be impossible to find, and sometimes it can be a real Debbie Downer with timelines. So pause for a sec, we need to record this. All right, so we've got our ends switched out here to the Ashlock ends, and this is going to work awesome. So the receptacle portion is fit into the tail. This piece here, which because the aircraft is upside down, we don't have good access, but our locking mechanism is right there, and everything fits together very nicely.
Do you have a checklist that you go through before any first flight? Do you use checklists at all, or are you at a pro level now, so you got this?
Who's that from?
From CM.
Oh, no checklist, it's all up here. There is a mental checklist that we go through. So on a normal turbine aircraft, so it doesn't matter what it is, but you know, if we were taking a turbine aircraft out to a field to do the maiden, obviously we've got all the setup primarily done before it leaves the shop. We'll go to the field, and the first thing we'll do is double check all of our throws and such. We're going to fill up the fuel tank. We are going to do a taxi test. So the taxi test has two purposes. Number one, taxi it around, get a feel for the ground handling. You know, that kind of just gets the aircraft moving. The latter part of the taxi test is stopping the plane, having your helper stand by the plane and doing a range check. There's been some guys that have commented, I fly Jetty, I don't do a range check. I would suggest always doing a range check. And so what we'll do with Jetty is we'll do our range check, and it's important that the person doesn't touch the aircraft the whole time, hands off in each position. So if I'm standing 30 paces that way, airplane's facing you guys, I'm going to put it into range mode and put the transmitter in kind of the worst position. So I'll usually face the aircraft, and then you're just looking at the numbers on the screen. So it's going to tell you signal levels 975, 799, whatever it is, and it goes through. Your helper rotates the aircraft, double check, rotates it again, and you're done. Engine's got to be running. You want to have all the systems going when you do that. So that's the process. Bring the aircraft back, give it a check over, fuel it, fly it. Now, for me, it usually takes me about 20 flights before I'm really confident with an aircraft and it's 100% set up. So at our event the past weekend, I was finally really wringing out my kinetics and the Super Elan. Both of them had about 20 flights on them, but everything's kind of dialed in. So that first 10 to 20 flights, you want to make sure you're changing something every flight. You may not have to, but don't get the aircraft up and always be compensating for something. Make a mental note, you need to make a mix, or you need to compensate for this, or you need to add more throw, less throw, more expo, less expo. Don't let your fingers work around that stuff. Make the plane fly better for you.
Blackheart says, with all the builds that you have done, is there a manufactured kit you prefer, or is it just based on the airframe?
That's a bit of a hard one to answer because I haven't built for every manufacturer, or I haven't built every manufacturer's plane. Convenience or comfort level kind of helps with that stuff, or familiarity helps with that. I'm very familiar with Skymaster kits now and all their problems that they always come with. So when I build a Skymaster kit, it's not really a big deal for me because I know generally the stuff that's going to need to be fixed, changed, re-engineered, rethought out. If I was to pick some aircraft that I've dealt with that are just good aircraft to begin with, everything kind of coming out of Spain right now, so Hispano Aviation, Kinetics, the aircraft are amazing. They're just beautiful. Everything's engineered very well. The Boomerang lineup, generally everything's well thought out, but you have to do a little bit more stuff. You've generally got to hinge all your surfaces. So everyone's a little bit different, but they, you know, they all have their different idiosyncrasies to work around, but there are some kits that just when they show up, it's like, wow, this was super easy to build. You know, my Kinetics as an example, it was just amazing. It's so easy.
Do you source parts and materials here locally in Canada, or do you cross border?
Pretty much everything I order is all cross border. In Canada, for jet stuff, we've got one supplier that carries some weird little turbine odds and ends, but really nobody, I mean, I carry some stuff, but not like DreamWorks as an example. DreamWorks is where I order most of my stuff from, but that's changed a little bit because we've got different things to order from different suppliers. For most of my bits and bytes that you see in those bins out in the trailer, it's DreamWorks. I've ordered from them for 10 plus years, and they're awesome. I love all the different bits and bytes that they carry, but order most of my stuff from the US, Powerbox USA, Aero Panda for some things. So it's, yeah, it's kind of whoever has it, but DreamWorks is kind of my go-to.
Opinion on Jetty auto trim feature, and that's from Dave.
I don't like it. I haven't used it a ton. I did use it with, actually, you know what? Let me back up. I've never used the Jetty auto trim feature. I used V-bars. That's what it was. I don't know. I don't really see a purpose for it. You know, when you have a plane that you're flying for the first time and you bring it up, have somebody trim it out for you. I don't know. I would rather have control over that than have a computer doing it for me. So, you know, it's pretty easy. If it's minor out of trim, you should be able to do it yourself. You know, you should always have a spotter standing with you. If it's crazy out of trim and you need to hold back stick to keep the thing flying, have your helper add trim to it while you're flying. So, I don't know. I don't use it. I don't really see a need for it.
This is a good one. CEO says, do you ever take your builds once they're done and when no one is around, pick them up and hold it over your head and walk around and pretend to fly it around your shop?
Nice. That's funny. No, but that's funny.
And then he says, Jetty versus Futaba thoughts. Radios more
Ooh.
sell Jetty products.
I don't sell Jetty products. Everything that comes into North America goes through Jetty USA. So the other suppliers that carry Jetty products are getting them from Jetty USA. As far as today, I don't sell Jetty. The markup is very small, so I say support AeroPanda, support Jetty USA. If you have to order stuff, we do have a Canadian supplier as well, Thunderbolt. So that's the Jetty end of things. Every radio is amazing. Let's just leave it at that, but we'll add to that. Every radio is amazing. The radio test that we have coming up is going to speak volumes, I think. I've reached out to every manufacturer, every big manufacturer, and given them the opportunity to participate in the radio test on their terms being supply whatever radio they want, supply whatever receiver they want. And there has been some manufacturers like Powerbox USA, they sent me a core radio. So this is the demo radio. It's not my radio, it's just a loaner. And I thank them for that because there's not a lot of guys around us that fly core, but they sent me the demo core. They sent me a 9-channel receiver to use, brand new out of the package. And that's awesome. They stepped up to the plate. There was 0 questions. It was basically, heck yeah, we want to be part of this test. I didn't contact Jetty because I own a Jetty. I own their DS24. So no reason to contact Jetty. I didn't contact Spectrum because I own an IX20. I don't fly anything with my IX20 other than some foamies, but that's it. I did contact Futaba, and this is all stuff that we're going to talk about in the radio test. They declined to participate in the test. They said they didn't feel that they needed to. Futaba will still be part of the test, but it will be now on our terms. So we'll use a radio that we find that somebody's willing to donate for the test, and we'll use a receiver that they're willing to donate as well. So that's Futaba's end of things. Yeah. We've got other manufacturers that we're currently working on with. Radio Master, I reached out to them. They wanted to be part of the test. They weren't willing to provide me with the radio, so they did provide me with a massive discount on a radio, so I paid for the Radio Master radio. They are giving me the receivers to participate with the test. Free Sky, I reached out to Free Sky. Had some discussions back and forth. I haven't heard back from them. So if Free Sky decides they don't want to participate in the test, Randy Smith, who's local to me now, he's going to donate his Free Sky radio for the test. And I think that's all of them. There's probably a couple we're missing, but anyway, so that the radio test will it'll speak volumes because I'm going to share all the stuff that I'm sharing with you guys right now on that radio test.
Dave says, contentious question. Me and some friends love Sweetwing in general, but almost all of us have had issues with, and only with the 80. Maybe too small for your projects, but have you noticed this trend?
That's from Dave?
Yeah.
Dave, explain a little bit, if you can, what kind of problems, doesn't have to be in depth, just what kind of problems you guys are having. If you don't mind, because that makes things a little bit easier to talk about. Now, I know there's some guys, like I've had guys from Australia, sorry guys, I've had one fellow from Australia contact me saying his turbine is using more fuel than he expected, so the fuel efficiency is very low. Anyways, so if you give me some explanations, I will touch more on it.
David says Powerbox core is a great bit of kit.
Yes. I still don't think it's, and I don't have much experience with it, I still don't think it's quite where Jetty is as far as capabilities, but if I was to pick another radio to put all my aircraft on, Powerbox would definitely be it. I would have no problems flying my aircraft with Powerbox radio gear.
CM says, do you do trainer flight sessions for newbies for jet pilots looking to cross over from heli? Asking for a friend.
I need your hand for a sec. Grab that kicker right there.
My hand's asleep.
And spray it right in here. Yeah, you're hired.
I didn't get that on video.
That's okay. I just can't do this all at once. Problems of not having fingers on your left hand. And then usually I end up gluing my fingers in place. Yeah, when I go to events, I actually like to try and get people on the sticks if I can. It's a little easier when my friend Stacy is there because usually we've got his aircraft or my aircraft all set up on each other's radio. So as an example, the end of last event, Stacy really wanted to fly the Super Elan, so we got him buddy boxing on the Super Elan. Not that he really needs to buddy box it, but just makes things a little bit easier and a little bit safer. So we definitely do that, and I love doing that. I love getting new people flying aircraft because I tell you, when you're standing there for the first time flying a turbine aircraft, Trusty, thank you, it becomes real addicting real quick. When you fly a turbine for the first time, man, it is an experience. So that usually gets people hooked very quickly and easily. I guess it's kind of like being a drug dealer.
Dave Freeman says he's stuck in traffic, so that'll probably answer that question before.
Sounds good.
Kelly says, we'll have to plan to attend a jet meet in Arizona this winter. Just got off the phone with Patrick as they are down there now.
Yeah.
I'm coming.
Of course you are. Who invited this girl? Yeah, I'd like to do some stuff in Arizona. When I was at the event this past weekend at Tofield Jets, some of the guys were talking about events down in Arizona as well too. So I think that'd be tons of fun to do as well. So definitely on board for that. It's a heck of a drive for us, but that's okay.
CM says, do you fly under MAC rules or Transport Canada?
So things have changed a little bit for us this year. So I may not answer this right, but So we have to fly, currently we have to fly, I guess it's under Transport Canada because we have to have our RPAS, which is our drone license basically is what we need to have because they consider everything a drone. So we are following all the RPAS rules. MAC is still our governing body, I guess. You know, the fields are approved by MAC, sanctioned by MAC. So I don't really know the answer to that. I kind of stay out of that kind of stuff. But right now we're following all the rules that we need to follow. And that's pretty much it, so.
Okay, so Dave says, okay, engine quitting on power up for takeoff, quitting in flight, failure to start, honestly kind of random issues with only the 80.
A lot of that stuff can be, I'm going to answer this carefully. And the reason I'm going to answer it carefully is because there's dealers in the US, one that I think is amazing, one that I don't think is amazing. Other people don't share that view. So the event that I was at this past weekend, a guy was flying a turbine aircraft with a SWE-Win 80. New pilot, and I think he had like 4 flights on the aircraft, and it really wasn't working that well. And one of the organizers of the event came over to me. He knows I'm the Canadian SWE-Win dealer. And he came over to me and said, hey, can you come over and help this fellow out? I forget the guy's name. Might have been Mike, I think, maybe. Anyway, so I went over and his engine wasn't starting. It was a SWE-Win 80. So first thing I did was inspected the plane. Everything looked like it was built right. It was a foam ARF, or a foam bind and fly type thing with a SWE-Win in there, an 80. And so I asked him some questions about it, what it was doing. It wasn't starting up properly. It wasn't ramping up properly. So first thing I did was go in and change a bunch of settings. So a bunch of the settings were not proper. Now you can't really do a ton of stuff in the settings, but there's small things you can do in the settings that really affect how the turbine starts, ramps up. And then there's some other things you can do that really affect how the turbine runs. And also there's some things you need to do on the control stick when you do the first startup. So this is stuff that I think people will generally kind of rush. You know, any mechanical device can have an issue with it, especially turbines. You know, all turbines are amazing. They all work. They're all going to have issues, but the setup is really important. So what I did was I went through and made all these changes for this fellow. We started the engine up. It started better. It actually started. And then what we did was a really important step, and that is let the idle stabilize. And this kind of goes for any turbine. Let the idle stabilize where it's supposed to be. So this particular engine, I think, was maybe 50,000 RPM. Anyways, it started up, it was idling high. We let that number come down. So the fuel pump compensates, slowly brings that number down. And then what we do is we slowly increase the idle over 20 to 30 seconds to max throttle. So very, very slow. So I'm holding the aircraft, we've got our safety gear on, 1 click at a time. Don't rush it. Slowly bring that turbine to max RPM and let the max RPM stabilize. We throttled down, did a quick throttle up like this. It was accelerating way too fast. So we went in, his accel rate on a SWE-Win should be about 25 to 30. His accel rate was 40, which means it's faster. The higher the number, the faster it is. I immediately, it was accelerating in like 2.8 seconds. I dropped that number down to 25. It was accelerating at like 4.5 seconds. We bumped it up. I think we finished at 27. So there are some things with the engine setup, and I'm not going to share some stuff because maybe I will over time, but not right now, that were not set right from the guy down in the US that set this engine up for him. Leads me to believe that the engine was never test run before it got shipped out. So there could be inherent problems with those engines that you're talking about, Dave. You know, if you have a blockage in one of your fuel needles, the engine's going to run like crap. The other thing that happened this past weekend, we had another fellow running a King Tech. Harold was running his King Tech, I think it's a 160, and he went to go start his airplane up, it died. Throttled up, died. Kept dying, had a what I call a huffing or a chuffing sound. So I went up to Harold and I said, Harold, what kind of fuel are you using? He's using Jet A. Did you filter your fuel through your Mr. Funnel? He's like, I don't know what that is. I said, okay, well, let's pull all your fuel out of your aircraft, every last bit of it, including the stuff out of the UAT. We'll put my fuel in there, which is also Jet A, and we'll see if it runs. So we put my Jet A in his aircraft, ran perfectly. We went through the same throttle stick thing I just told you, but it ran perfectly. So then what we did is we ran all of his fuel through a Mr. Funnel, and I'll show you guys what the Mr. Funnel is. So we ran all of his fuel through a Mr. Funnel, taking all the water out of his fuel. He put his fuel back in his aircraft and it ran perfectly. So a lot of people will jump to conclusions and initially blame the turbine, but there can be a lot of outside forces or outside things affecting how the turbine runs. Fuel, settings on the engine, throttle stick, you know, that first setup type thing, letting the engine stabilize and adjust. So there's a lot of factors, you know, maybe 75% of them are user controlled, 25% of the issues that people have might be engine specifically. So hopefully that answers your question. Those are some of the things that we'll touch on more, but I'll show you guys the Mr. Funnel and what it is. I think Mr. Funnel sales went through the roof at that event because everybody got on Amazon and started ordering their Mr. Funnel. So this is Mr. Funnel. So there's a whole bunch of different ones, but basically it's got a green filter inside there.
Can't really see. Oh, there we go.
So that green filter filters out obviously particulates, but water. So you could take this funnel right now and you could fill it up with water, and the water's not going to pass through the green filter. Fuel, oil, all types of fuels pass through the green filter. So all of my fuel gets funneled through the Mr. Funnel. And then what happens is if you've got water in your fuel, when you put it through here, you'll see water. There'll be a little bit of kerosene or Jet A in the bottom, but below that, because it's heavier, it'll sit at the bottom, and usually you can swish it around and you can actually see the water in there. So that is a very handy tool to have. All my fuel gets filtered through the Mr. Funnel. So Dave, hopefully that answers your questions. Yeah, a lot of it's user-induced, I think. More questions? That was kind of a long-winded answer.
When you go turbine, you never go back, someone says.
Exactly. Everything else is boring.
Says, what's one or two or maybe three things that would help you with your bills? For example, tools, equipment, resources, time, labor.
Tool-wise, I think I would like to do. I'd like to get some machining tools. I think that would. I don't know if that would necessarily help with the builds, but it would bring a new dynamic into things, like a lathe and stuff like that. But a lot of those things you don't really know that you need until you actually find a solution to them. A couple of years ago, my friend Kelly, he gave me a multi-bit set that lives in my trailer, and that multi-bit set actually has kind of like a flexible end to it, and that thing has been a huge help. It's like a screwdriver with a flexible end, and just a nice little tool that really makes certain scenarios a heck of a lot easier to deal with. But also with laying things out too is a real big time saver for me. So having a layout in the shop that works and is functional, and so you know where everything is and you're not searching for stuff, is always helpful.
Kelly said, I'm amazing.
Kelly, you are amazing.
No, Kelly said, I'm amazing.
What? Katie's amazing? Yes, she is.
Aaron says, patiently waiting for a certain video to be released.
Haven't even edited it yet, Aaron, but coming soon.
Dave says, I think I know the amazing one. He's awesome. I think we were talking about the Sweden dealers
Yes.
in the States. CM says, turbines, they're great until they're not. Life goes on.
Exactly.
And he says, do you wave and say hi to heli pilots at the field?
I'm a heli pilot too. I haven't flown it in 2 years, but there's one up there.
That's what he started on.
That's what I started flying.
Is that slow, Dave says, is that slow acceleration of the throttle something to do before every new day of flying?
Not necessarily every new day, but yes and no. The slow acceleration is more when you just started up for the first time or you've changed something. Now, it does become a recommended thing to do if you're flying at a different location. So to expand on that a little bit, what I'm talking about is last weekend we were at, the location we were flying at is at 2,200-ish feet above sea level. Here, where we do most of our flying, is at 3,300 feet. So as soon as we go to that field, the very first time your turbine's running, it's going to idle differently. So you want to make sure you let that idle recover and let the fuel pump adjust to what it needs to adjust to. And then I always do a full throttle run-up before I do a flight. I don't necessarily do the slow throttle run-up, but I'll always do a full throttle run-up. But that when we went to the new field, I knew I needed to do that. So I let my idle stabilize, went to max throttle, let my max throttle stabilize, and then you're good to go generally for the event. When we come back to a higher elevation or lower elevation, those are good times to do that action.
Stephen says, recognition for me too again. Behind the scenes support, letting me talk.
Yeah.
We're going out for dinner.
The official comment reader.
Kelly says he's ordering a new funnel now.
Perfect.
CM says, golden nugget right there. Flexi tool going to be on order now. And then do you fust it off? I don't know what that means. Oh, dust it off. It's sitting up there all on its own, looking at all the jets coming and going.
Yeah, there's actually a new tail piece sitting up there. It's actually jammed in the tail. I have zero desire to change that tail piece, and that's why the heli doesn't fly. It just sits there. And it's also on a radio which I don't own anymore, my JR28X. So the radio needs to be reprogrammed for Jetty. I don't dust it off, it just sits there.
Kelly says he's going to get you another bit set for the shop so you can have one in the trailer and the shop.
Nice.
Can you hear me? Can you guys hear me when I'm talking?
Who?
Like everybody watching. I don't know if you can hear me or not.
Oh, hear you?
Yeah.
Yeah. Because it's going to get picked up by my microphone. Better with this setup than my AirPod. It's been an hour already on the live stream. All right, so we got all of our tail lines.
How often, if ever, do you have to remove a glued-in piece because you didn't foresee a future issue with a custom part assembly you've made and installed?
Ooh, that happens. That happens probably once per build. And actually a good point is on the Strega install here. Dave Wilshire from over in the UK, he suggested putting washers against your, gluing high some washers against your firewall. So because we've already got our front bracket installed and all of our spacing set up, what I'm going to be doing is using a drill bit, getting this drilled out so we can install the washer, but that washer is going to be flush with the firewall, glued in place. So that won't really change anything dimensionally, but if I didn't have this front part glued in, it's highly likely that I would just glue these onto the face of the firewall. So once a build is a pretty good ratio, I say, to answer that question. It happens. It's frustrating, but you deal with it. That's it for questions. All caught up?
Have you gone back to look at a build that you've done from many moons ago and wondered, look and awe at yourself, how did you do all that? It's not, and you're like, oh yeah, that's my build. I think about that all the time. Like, I don't know how he does all this.
Just do it. I don't have that thought. It's nice to see the sticker on there though. So we're putting the pieces coming forward in the Strega. That's all going through a piece of snakeskin. And then part of the reason is all these lines pass through a former in the rear part of the tail. So that former, we want to make sure we've got the snakeskin going through that former to protect the lines. And people ask how I get the stuff through the snakeskin. Well, this is how it happens. Squish and push and squish and push.
Kelly says, just a note to all, if you use high cell, it does not like heat from from a solder gun. So if you need to remove some, just use heat. A monocoated
Yes.
heat gun will soften it as well.
A monocoaty?
I don't know. Is that right?
No.
Probably not right.
A monocoat. That's funny.
I told Jonathan the other day that I'd help him with the builds, but it would look like a toddler did it. And people would wonder why their jets didn't fly. So that was a no-go.
Yes, that is a no-go.
I'll stay behind the camera.
And there we go. Oops, reach through. One of the challenging things with the Strega is, where do you put the equipment? Because there's no equipment tray. So I've actually been thinking about this for quite some time. And initially I thought I would build an equipment tray down here above the channel, the air exhaust channel. I may build it on the top of the aircraft so everything's going to be inverted. Not really 100% sure yet. But I'm getting closer to having to make a decision. So.
Thoughts on electrical wiring, making custom leads or using manufactured ones and just dealing with it if they're too long and tucking it away?
Say that again?
Thoughts on electrical wiring, making custom leads or using manufactured ones and just tucking them away?
Always make custom ones. I'll sometimes, like if we've got a tray set up where you've got all the equipment sitting on a tray, and actually here's a good example. So a scenario like this where you may have your GS200 sitting right beside your central box, you know, a through fitting right here. So I could just tuck all the excess through the through fitting, plug this guy in. So in that case, I'll use a pre-made lead, but anything else is all custom leads. I don't like using manufactured extensions and things like that. I would sooner make the lead myself, know that I crimped everything properly, and everything's just going to be set up properly.
Save the Human says, what, this still isn't done yet?
No, taking forever.
And then CM says, how do you deal with CG while you're figuring out where everything is going to go?
Some of that happens in the pre-planning, or most of it happens in the pre-planning. So, you know, usually you can find information from other people kind of on the general layout of things and how things are going to work. I used to try and predetermine battery locations. That has always bitten me in the butt, so I'll kind of leave the battery location absolutely to the very end. You know, you might have an idea, and on some aircraft, the F4, the batteries have to go in the nose. That's just the way it is. Something like the Strega, well, you've got a huge area where you can put the batteries. They're probably going to have to go in the tail because it's going to need tail weight. So you kind of have an idea there, but with a lot of aircraft builds where you've got good access and stuff like the kinetics, my kinetics, you know, you could put the batteries anywhere in the aircraft. So I left it wide open until we were doing the CG, and then I figured out the location, and then we went from there.
Dave says, can you see your crimper?
Yeah. So that's the crimper. This comes from Powerbox USA, or DreamWorks has them, but that is the crimper that I use. Basically, any servo lead is going to be using this end one here. So I've never used this, what is that, 18 to 22. I've never used that. It's always this one right there. That's my crimper tool. I don't suggest buying a cheap one from Amazon because they don't work very well.
Do you get sad when your build leaves the shop, or are you like, next?
Ooh, good question. No, I'm probably, by the time I'm usually done the builds, I'm kind of happy to see it go. I'm sad if something happens to the aircraft. So there's a little bit of an emotional attachment. Like if I was to build an aircraft for somebody and they were to on purpose take it up and crash it, I would be kind of upset. That's kind of the only thing that really triggers me. But I am often, by the time I'm done with it, I'm kind of sick of it, so I'm happy to see it go.
CM says, if you're gonna do it right. These are not cheap builds.
Yes.
And he says, I have found your multi-hand tool for soldering very useful.
Yeah, very much so. It's a cool tool. I've used it a ton for lots of different things. So, this is a bit of a tricky aircraft because obviously if we put our tray right here, everything kind of makes sense when you're probably going to be working on the aircraft because the aircraft is going to be upside down with the wing off. So it's going to make a ton of sense to have it positioned right here. When you're putting the aircraft together, it's going to be like this. You're going to plug in the wings. Right now, I'm just talking through how I would normally go through this process. just so you're aware. And if we're aircraft sitting on the ground, we take our hatch off. This would be the other situation it might be in. So if we did a tray down there at the bottom, we'd be looking at all of our stuff.
Dave says, thanks for all we do. Love your channel, love and all that you've taught him so much. And he says he's off to work.
Awesome. Thanks, Dave. Thanks for hopping on and watching.
Save the Human says, is there any aircraft you just say no? I wouldn't build that.
Yeah. Yeah, it happens. Recently, in the past year, I don't think I've turned anything down. I've made some suggestions to people, like some people want to get a perfect example is like a foamy. They want to get a foamy, they want to change the scheme on the foamy, but the problem with that is it's really difficult to mask and not have it pull off paint. So you really have to be aware that if you do decide to change the scheme, or I decide to change the scheme for you, it's not going to be perfect, right? There's going to be some areas where you pull off your prep, even though you've de-stickified it as much as possible. You pull that prep off, and some paint's going to come with it. So it's just unfortunately the way it is. So I'll make people aware of that. Some of the projects that I don't necessarily say no to, but people have to understand there's a significant cost involved, would be a kit build. So something like the T33 that I'm building for myself, or the Super Bandit, you get a box of parts. Some of it's just raw parts, and that aircraft is from a box of parts to a finished aircraft. Nothing's done, nothing's painted. So with that comes a huge time suck as well too. So with that time suck comes cost, right? So it's not just a normal assembly or build of a jet or whatever it is. You're talking about maybe 4 or 5 times the amount of labor involved to be able to do that. So I wouldn't say no to those projects. They're going to take longer to do. There's going to be a huge cost difference as well.
Echo Smoke, have you played with your laser anymore?
Ooh, Joe. I haven't played with my laser anymore. I do need to, because I want to cut the trays with the laser, and I actually want to do a video on that as well. I haven't played with my laser more, but I'm going to be probably this weekend. The other cool thing is we had Bamboo Labs reached out to me, and Bamboo Labs is going to be sending me a X1 carbon combo printer, which is super cool. I've actually been looking at that one for quite a few months now, and to have them reach out and send me one, huge thumbs up to them. They'll probably never watch this live stream, but thank you to Bamboo Labs for doing that. And from what I've heard, it's just a unbelievably simple printer to use. I'm not a 3D printer hobbyist. I want to buy it as a tool and just be able to use it. So it sounds like that is a great alternative as well. The laser, though, we haven't used it a ton, but we will be using it more.
So you airbrush, and then Iwata airbrushes?
That's a brand.
Sorry guys.
Katie's reading this saying, what the heck are you saying? I do airbrush. I don't own a fancy airbrush. I own a cheap, crappy airbrush. I don't airbrush a lot. The last airbrush project we did, it's sitting behind Katie in that box. And that was the MiG that we did a whole bunch of crazy weathering on it. But if we're painting an aircraft, I will use rattle cans or a automotive sprayer is the easiest way to say it.
CM, have you just walked by your new table just to push the button on it to see if it goes up or down for the fun of it. Well, the novelty is still fresh. I'm sure he has.
Totally. It's right there. It's actually unplugged right now, so because I was all over the place yesterday with the power cord. But I tell you, that is darn handy. I haven't fully integrated it yet. I just put the mat down on there. So this is the rubber matting that I use. It's like gym flooring. I still need to cut this end, but having the ability to like raise and lower that thing to different heights is like game changer. Super cool. Love it. And it's really stable. Like it's up to the same level as this right now. And it's like, yeah, it's crazy stable for being adjustable. Man, I can't believe it's been an hour and 20 minutes already.
Time flies when you're having fun.
Yeah, I know. All right, so this is pretty much as far as we can do in this video. So we're going to wrap this, the video we're recording, we're going to wrap this video up. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to put the wing on this thing. And this is going to be one heavy plane when we get that that engine installed. Crazy. So if I leave the big pink thing in there, I won't be able to get that out once we get the wing on. So I need to put the smaller balls in. The balls I'm just using as counterweight because right now the tail is heavy and there's no engine installed. So, first time we're bolting the wing on. Well, yeah, you put it together and then you put a bolt through it. All right, so we've got our wiring all run forward here as much as we can do. So it's time to put the wing on this aircraft and see how she sits and looks. So we've got the aircraft upside down. We've got a couple weights in there that we can take out through the top hatch here. But we're going to put the wing on the aircraft. Now the Carf wing, fairly straightforward. You would pull the wing out of the wing bags. You put a single bolt through the base of the wings. Obviously the wing tube's installed. And now that creates one solid wing. There's a little bit of movement there between the two wings, but then you've got two bolts here that go into the front part of the wing, leading edge part of the wing into the fuselage, and then two massive ones here that bolt the whole wing to the aircraft. So let's get this wing installed on the fuselage and see what she looks like. And that is the magic. All right.
Do you use Tamiya, Alclad, and weathering powders for weathering?
Usually I'm using, depends on the scenario. Usually I'm going to be using, oh, this thing is heavy. Well, this is fun. I'll answer your question in a moment. I'm just figuring this guy out. And this, my friends, is the struggle. There we go. Whew. I don't usually use weathering powders. What I'll use is, okay. So there's a little notch there we have to get underneath. If I'm doing a jet weathering process, Wow, this is a real pain. I'll just use oil paints as kind of my preferred. I like to make up a mix of like turpentine and different color oil paints, and then brush that on, wipe it off. That's kind of the step number one. So, but there's so many different ways to weather aircraft that there's really no right or wrong way to do it. It's all user preference. Okay, so the issue we're having is the flaps are down, and there's a little notch in the flaps that's preventing us from, oh, that can't be it because that's built into the wing. Who would have thought that it's this difficult? All right, let's take a look. So, it's this little guy right here that's causing us the issues. So we'll eliminate one scenario or one variable and level our flaps out. So the reason the flaps are stuck is because you get the flaps, the servo arms straightened out mechanically right now. So there's no way to straighten the flaps without actually pushing the servo arm. Yeah.
Milwaukee is mounted. Heavy, it says.
Kelly, what's the weight of the Milwaukee? Is it similar to the Colm engine? Because the Colm is, so with the starter, the Colm is 18.5 pounds, I think, is what it works out to be.
Says you mentioned you towed in those wheels. Thoughts on the reasoning for that?
Well, generally with jets, you add a little bit of tow in. It's only a couple degrees. You add the tow in to help it track more straight. So if you set up a jet and it's got zero tow in, so it's perfectly straight, or it's towed out, you'll find the aircraft doesn't handle very well. It tends to skate side to side. It's always hunting. When you add a little bit of tow in, it makes the aircraft track better. So that's the mentality behind it. With the Warbird, you can find two sides of that story. You can find people that say you should add tow out, you should keep it neutral, you should do tow in. So I just did what I knew and added a couple degrees of tow in. I think we need to put this on like this. Oh, who's smart? This guy. Yeah, everything kind of interlocks on the back end, so you have to have a little bit of a gap there, drop it in place, and then pop it in. I think that, yeah, so even without bolts, this wing, I mean, obviously it could come out with enough force, but the wing is not going to really go anywhere.
Yeah, do you ever just make paper airplanes for just a quick build for a dopamine boost? That's tough.
Nice. No. That's the downside of using the oil, is they take quite a while. So if you were to mix oil paints with, I usually use brown and black. Actually, I'll show you guys if you want to see. So it's more brown than black generally. So, but there's the two colors. So raw umber is kind of the normal color, burnt umber. So you're using, like, if you were to give a ratio, 4 parts this, 1 part that, 1 part black. But you mix that together, you dilute it with mineral spirits, turpentine, whatever. Obviously you want to use something that's not going to react to the existing finish on the aircraft. That's important. You make a watered down mixture of it, and I would do, you can do it a couple different ways. I've done F-18s in the past where essentially I'm dipping a rag into it and I'm wiping it on the entire surface. You let it, so you want to do a surface at a time. You let it sit for 20 minutes kind of thing. Then you take a clean rag and you wipe it off in the direction flow. That would be for a very, very dirty finish, like very well-used aircraft carrier type thing. The drying time is the downside. So if you're using oil paints with turpentine, you basically have to let it sit for a week, 2 weeks. Obviously the weather's going to determine that before it's dry enough to accept clear coat. And then you generally clear over top of it. You can leave it the way it is and it'll naturally weather more or whatever. But I like to clear coat over top of it. So there's lots of different ways to do it. If you use acrylics or different powders and things like that, you can probably clear over top of it much quicker.
Have you ever had a customer want to come home?
Yeah, more of a friend. So about 2 years ago, we were doing the big Fabeo F-15 build for my buddy Chad. He came over when he could in the evenings and helped out, but he more just watched and held things and pushed airlines on and stuff. But don't really have a problem with it. Obviously, it's just more of a scheduling thing.
That sure is a pretty F-18.
Sure is.
And then I think this is a response to a previous comment. I think so, like 14-ish. The weight.
Probably the what?
The weight of the.
Oh, the Moki. Yeah, 14 pounds.
But from what guys are telling me, even with that weight, it's still going to be 7 pounds of balance weight in the nose.
Yeah. Surprising.
Do you go to Jonelle?
Never been, but I would like to go. I think it's kind of on our to-do list this next year. So we'll see.
Are parachutes a safety feature or just for flashy scale landing looks?
Just for flashy scale landing looks. You actually, it does look cool. You got to make sure that you put a bunch of safety features in there. So when you put a parachute on an aircraft, some of the bigger ones, we've actually got some coming up. You want to make sure that you have, some of them use a release. So on the Sukhoi, that's coming up, the big Su-30, there's a release built into it, like a servo release. On something like the F4, there's absolutely not enough room back there to do a built-in release. So the release would be if you're up flying, parachute deploys for some reason because you do the right combination, you can flick a switch and have the servo release the parachute. In the case of the F4 or most aircraft, you'd want to make sure you have a bunch of conditions set up. So, you know, for that parachute to release on a Jetty system, you need to be at full flaps, brakes on, turbine RPM below, if it idles at 38,000, turbine RPM has to be below 40,000 as an example, and then when you flick that switch, it will release. So those are the conditions, the safety conditions you want to make sure you set up.
Stacy says, who would purposely crash an airplane?
I don't know. Maybe somebody looking for a thrill. So these bolts are too long, which is funny. Huh.
CM, do you do servo programming for each servo before using and installing, or is that something you just do once installed and through?
All the servo programming happens while the servo is getting installed. So the aileron as an example, I'll usually knock down the travel for a safety feature, but I'll try and get the directions and everything done. The tail, like the rudder on this aircraft, I haven't bothered with doing direction because we'll just check that after.
William says hi.
William, that must be Bill.
William B.
Yep. What's up, Bill?
CM says, does it cost more if they watch?
Yes. Depends on how much they talk.
Oh yeah, time. Stevie Human says, Joe Knoll is so much fun. We go every year. Buddy owns Red Baron Hobby, so we are there as vendors.
Oh, cool. Yeah, for us, the downside is the travel. So for us, when we go to Montana Jets, it's a 5-hour drive to get there, which is totally reasonable. When we go to, if we were to think about going to like somewhere on the East Coast, it's like 30 hours, right? Kilometer-wise, like I think I typed in South Carolina Jets or whatever jet events coming up in the next little bit here, just to see, because I was interested. And it was like 3,700 kilometers to get there. So if I wasn't pulling my trailer, it would take me 6 tanks of fuel just to get there with my SUV and then 6 tanks back. Like it's mind-blowing how long of a drive it is. So it's unfortunate because it'd be tons of fun. But so if we do go to an event like Joe Knoll, it's more of we fly there. Yeah. Fly there, hang out, but not bringing planes to fly.
Midwest RC says, what's up?
What's up, Midwest RC?
And then William says, love your after dark build sessions.
Thank you.
And CM, have you wanted to or have you worked on model pyrotechnics?
Ooh, I haven't.
Flares.
I haven't. I don't know if I think the US is the same. We're not allowed in Canada, so nothing's supposed to leave your aircraft. You're not allowed to shoot off flares and stuff like that. So I think it'd be fun, but I haven't because we're not allowed to. So.
Says, yeah, Joe Knoll is a 3-hour drive from north of Chicago. Same with AMA Expo East, what was called the Round Event.
Yeah, it's a long drive for you guys too. So yes, these are definitely too long. So yeah, stuff like this drives me a bit mental too, because it's like not even remotely close to going in. And these ones are too short.
CM says, did it happen if no one sees it?
Maybe not. That's why you guys are getting all the behind the scenes stuff. Nobody else that just watches the regular videos knows about any of this stuff. So I think these are the right ones.
I get dinner tonight for my camera skills here.
Yes, she does. Still too short.
Yeah, Kelly says the irony, a wife that's a professional baker and you're on keto.
Yeah.
I haven't mastered keto yet, the art of baking keto, because it's just not the same.
No. I've been really looking forward to it, but it's quite sad when I get home and the keto brownie is
It looks good.
just not up to the standards.
Does not taste good.
So, here's the challenge. The bolts that I think they included for bolting the wing on are far too short or far too long, and the ones that are even remotely close are too short. So the ones we actually need to be about that much longer. So we can't even cut these ones down because they're not threaded enough.
You're from Canada. Where's all the and Labatt's beer?
No comment.
And Kelly says we should come down to Montana and go to barbecue at Famous Dave's.
Heck yeah. See, everybody thinks in Canada we're like, hey, let's go down to the river, and like drink some beer,
And live in igloos.
And live in igloos with our penguins, That's kind of like the native Indian way of talking.
But we have, what's the word I'm looking for? Accents, depending on which area of this country you're in.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
States and everywhere else. So you can go from one side to the other and speak a different accent.
Yeah, and if you're in Eastern Canada, it'll be a lot of Frenchies, Francophones. I don't think I have a bolt big enough.
Do you dream about airplane builds, or are you always thinking about what's next to work on, or do you leave it at the shop door?
No, it doesn't get left at the shop door. It's always on my brain about what we're doing next, what's next, what's the next video, what's the next thumbnail. It's never ending. That's why when we go to events like last weekend, I'm actually okay not flying this weekend. I love flying, but we got to catch up on stuff in here because it's been 2 weeks of non-productivity. So yes, we officially don't have one that's going to work. Well, that stinks.
Famous Dave's, excellent choice.
Yeah. Very good choice.
See, we don't have that. We don't have
No.
Famous Dave's up here.
We've got a couple smaller places, like there's, from our house here, there's a barbecue place that's like 10 minutes away.
But it's more like a Texas barbecue, like a smokehouse.
Yeah,
It's still good though.
it's still good. But yeah, it's not, like Famous Dave's was awesome.
Save the humans. When you're not recording the build, what music is playing?
It's actually generally music or TV. So my music taste is really stupid. I kind of like everything depending on the mood I'm in. So my playlist is like everything from country old country, bluegrass, Jason Derulo, like just weird things, Halsey, like just everything, anything that makes me feel good. TV stuff, I like to watch things like Gold Rush, Bering Sea, the Bering Sea fishing one, the crab boat one. I'm actually on season 16 now, so I think there's a couple more seasons to go, but it's always playing in the background. But those are my go-to shows, is those ones.
Aaron says, less flying, more work.
I love this portion.
And what are your future plans for your channel shop, new ideas?
Well, the After Dark series was a big one, doing this. I'd like to get some interviews done with people. So the problem with that is I don't necessarily want to just do them on the internet. I want them to be in-person interviews. So that adds a bit of a challenge, of course, because I'm in Canada and a lot of people are all over the world. So I'd like to take this channel that direction and be able to do more of that stuff. My other channel, I don't know. I think I just keep doing what I'm doing on that channel. We've got a lot of planes every year that we've never built before, new models coming out. You know, there's always endless possibilities for stuff like that too, like with our balancer showing up hopefully soon. That adds a different dynamic as well too, to show people a bit more of the behind the scenes stuff that you generally wouldn't see from most turbine manufacturers or most service points. So there's lots of different directions that we can take it. We've been doing more review stuff lately and more work with different manufacturers. But some of that stuff gets into the non-RC side of things, like our 3D printers and laser cutters and stuff, but that also usually gets lower views. That's really ultimately, as somebody who does YouTube, the channel, the views is what matters. That's what actually makes the money for the channel. So the engine install on the Strega, that video already has like 120 or 140,000 views on it in the past week, I think. So that's really where a person like myself should put their focus to, is creating those videos that appeal to a wider audience. But with YouTube, you never really know what's going to happen. You might make a video and it just goes crazy because YouTube recommends it. You might think it's the best video you've ever made and only 2,000 people watch it. So it's a bit of a catch-22. So I'm always just trying to make good content no matter what I'm doing. But generally the audience that watches the channel, the regular Lighter Side of RC channel, are looking for builds. Like when I do a flight video, they're usually not as popular. So, but I would like to do more traveling with the channel too. That's kind of one of my longer term goals, is do more traveling, going to different factories, working with some different manufacturers. I don't know if we'll ever do anything along the lines of making an aircraft, but who knows? Who knows where things go? Who knows what the possibilities are? And I'm pretty open-minded with any new opportunity that pops up. So,
Brian says hello.
What's up?
What do you do if there are extra parts left over? Look around and see if anyone is looking, and then toss them in a drawer.
Well, that's a good question. So usually what I do is I have my build trays like this. Okay. There's always parts left over from most kits. And I've got things like CARF hardware. So this is all parts that I've saved from all the CARF kits. So some of this stuff I've actually purchased, like some of these metal linkages, but they're CARF branded linkages. But some of this stuff is just extra parts, right? That weren't used during the build because we did something a different way or whatever. So if it has a bin like this, This is my Skymaster bin right here. That's where it ends up. And if it's organizable, then I end up putting it from this tray into the appropriate locations in my parts bins. So when I go to an event, all of these little bins come with me, and this has a big smattering of different things. Good question.
Save the Human said Celine Dion would be upset. Back to music. Or just a favorite. Kelly says, we all have this guy we watch on TV that builds airplanes. Too bad you don't.
Nice.
Well, airplanes kind of just go around in oval circles, no?
If that's the way you choose to fly, yes. I don't like flying that way, and that's actually probably one of the reasons that going to a big event and flying is really not my cup of tea, because I just don't enjoy flying the circuit. Yeah, flying in a racetrack is not my thing, so it's fine, I'll do it, but I enjoy having more fun and being able to do whatever I want and more aerobatic stuff. Now you can do that when you've got, one other plane in the sky. That makes it easy, but like at Kentucky Jets, when you've got 6 planes in the sky all flying the racetrack, it becomes a lot more tough to be able to do that stuff.
Brian says, any word on the upcoming radio testing?
Yeah, so we've FR Sky. So we're just collecting radios right now. The Radio Master radio is going to be shipped out here soon. FR Sky, they haven't gotten back to me since last week, but we do have Randy who's willing to donate his radio for the test. So we've got one sort of figured out. Futaba has gotten back to me and said they don't want to participate. So, but we've got somebody that we can get a Futaba from. And our core is here. Our Jetty, of course, is here because I have one. Our Spectrum is here. I do need to buy a Spectrum satellite to go with the Spectrum receiver because we want to test it in both scenarios. So the goal with the radio test is probably going to be near the end of July if we can get everything here in time. I'll probably do it on a Friday or Saturday, and I'll need a bunch of bodies to make it happen successfully, probably 4 people, I think. So me, probably Katie, and then a couple other people depending on what day it is. So. Yeah, well, we made those long ones work by adding some spacers.
Save the Human says, yeah, I save everything as well. CM says, nice housekeeping ethics. How do you learn aerobatics when you don't want to dirt nap your aircraft?
Do it higher.
What about
What, simulator?
Simulator, yeah.
Yeah, simulator, meh. I don't like the simulator, but it helps you get over some of those initial things. The simulators aren't bad. I'm not a gaming guy, so I have a real tough time like sitting down with the simulator. Doesn't feel real. Everything feels too floaty. In 5 minutes, I'm bored out of my mind, and I just want to be back in here working on planes. So it's not my cup of tea, but the simulator can definitely help getting orientation and figuring out how things work. So. All right.
Is Canada mandating a transponder?
No, not as of right now. Who knows where all that stuff goes? We got an email from Mac this morning. So Mac's like our US version of AMA. it was a positive email. I just kind of scanned through it. Basically, we've got our SOC, or they're working on an SOC. They're working on increasing our weight limit, are getting our height limit increased. So there's a bunch of positive things in place. I think by next year, things will be a little bit more back to normal. But as of right now, I don't think we're going to have the transponder thing in place.
You're going to do the radio test live.
Huh?
Kelly wants to know if you're going to do the radio test.
No, I think it's going to be, so we've got a stretch of road, probably, so it's right, you know, when you go down the one-way bridge, come up the other side there, that highway goes straight. So it's like for 15 or 18 miles or something. So we've got a huge section of straight road, flat, straight, no water on it. And there's a nice parking spot kind of right at the beginning of the road. But because the radio test, I think, is probably going to take a good 8 hours. It's going to be a long day. I'm not going to do it live. I'm just going to record it all. But we will have, we'll have to have cameras set up recording the radio portion, and then a camera in the vehicle recording that portion. They'll be time-stamped together. And we'll be communicating by cell phone and stuff. So there'll be quite a few moving parts. So I think it's just too complicated to do live unless somebody was here just doing that portion. And like we didn't have to focus on it, but just the logistics of all the camera work involved in actually doing the test, that's enough for us. So.
Will FR Sky be new tandem type radio?
I'm not sure which one Randy has. I think it's the 20 model maybe, but it's a brand new one he just purchased. I don't know what it is, so but we'll use whatever he's got if FR Sky doesn't send one. So.
Sam says Canada just waits until everyone else has figured it out first.
Yeah. We're pretty much behind the curve, that's for sure.
Savvy Gimlin says, you know Monster Irish Blend is better than that flavor. I think he's talking about your Monster, but I don't know.
They just came out with sugar-free green Monsters. Amazing. I just got it all over my face. Not sponsored by Monster, but if they want to sponsor the channel, I would happily agree. You can put a fridge over there with their logo on it.
D. Blackheart says, thanks for the stream. Thoroughly enjoyed it. Unfortunately, has to work is calling.
Yeah, and we're cutting it out here pretty quick. So we got 1 minute left. We're trying to keep it under 2 hours every single time. So.
Stacy, are you placing an order anytime soon with Aero Panda?
Stacy, as in like my buddy Stacy? I don't know. Text me. So yeah, we'll cut it off there. Thanks guys for watching. I feel like we didn't get a lot done, but it was fun answering a ton of questions. The plane, unfortunately, you're going to miss out. You're going to have to watch the video. We've got the wing on. As soon as we cut this live stream off, we're going to flip the plane over on the ground. Looking forward to that. So thanks.
They can come watch the radio test.
Who?
CM wants to know.
Yeah, if you show up, you're like, seriously, if you guys show up, you're more than welcome to participate, to come visit. Absolutely. Totally up for visitors.
And do you carry a CO2 fire extinguisher?
Yes. I have one in the shop, a big sucker. I think it's maybe a 15 or 20 pounder. And then I always have one in my trailer that comes out flying with us. It's a 5-pound one.
Yeah. I think that's about it.
Awesome. Thanks guys for watching. Not sure when we're going to do it next week, so keep an eye out for the schedule, when it'll get scheduled. But we'll see you in the next live stream. And Sunday's video, I'm not entirely sure what it is yet, but it's probably going to be a flying plane video. So thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.